Hey, it's Dr. Knight. Thank you so much for coming back to join us on this series around the 7 types of domestic violence. We are going to dive in headfirst into our first topic, which is mental abuse. Okay, remember we're going to talk about each one of these, the signs, the symptoms, and how you can overcome it even. Okay, so what do you need to be recognizing? What are the things that contribute to this form of abuse? This is a tricky one. And as I shared before, both psychological and emotional abuse, so mental, emotional, and even some verbal abuse, they all kind of sound alike at some point. But there are some very specific behaviors, specifically with psychological and emotional abuse, that can be difficult to describe or to identify. It is when the perpetrator, the abuser, or the person who's causing the harm uses words and non physical actions to manipulate, hurt, scare, or upset you. And I think that it's important to note that if someone can capture our mind, they can capture our body, they can capture our spirit, they can capture our very soul by connecting their words to how we behave or overthink or how we become fearful in that situations. Our minds are so powerful. And if someone can control the way that you think, as I just said, they can control your actions, your behaviors, and ultimately your outcomes. But you must understand that everything begins with what we think about ourselves. And I learned many, many years ago that human beings cannot behave differently than what we believe. If we believe it, we're going to act on it. And whether that belief is negative or positive, those are the actions, those are the behaviors that we're going to carry out. And what many of us have done over the years, and I'm guilty of it myself, that's why I'm saying us and we, is that we've had negative thoughts about ourselves, about our weight, about our hair. We're not pretty enough. We're not thin enough. We're not thick enough. We're not curvy enough. We want curly hair to be straight. We want straight hair to be curly. And we're rarely satisfied with ourselves. And what happens is in these situations, when we're not satisfied with ourselves, we often believe what other people outside of us are saying. We take on their beliefs instead of finding out the truth for ourselves. And the problem with that is we grow up with this learned behavior and mental conditioning that has corrupted our thought process. If you think about it, do you know any babies that cry coming out of the womb and they have issues with self image? Or even a 2-year old who might say that they're ugly, or a 5-year old that is brutally honest and says that they're dumb because they can't read as well as the teacher or spell as well as their parents or write as well as they may want to. No, the things that children at this age and that we grow up with, that we are embracing and embodying, is something, the words outside of ourselves that brings to our attention the insufficiencies or the insufficiencies or the insecurities of that person that they don't believe about themselves. They bring that to us. And that begins somewhat of an abusive cycle in our minds and what we believe about ourselves. We hear it, we're told it over and over again. We're not good enough, we're not worthy, we're not pretty enough, we're too fat, we're too thin, all of those things. And you might have heard before too that hurt people hurt people. This is definitely true when it comes to mental abuse. We repeat what we've heard and we embrace that as our truth instead of learning what is actually our own personal truth and beginning to believe that and act upon that. People who want to keep us, you, them under their control use the same tactic and make us believe that they are the only person in the world who loves us, even though they themselves cannot truly define what love is. They prey on our confidence. First, they gaslight us, and I learned that word recently. I just thought, somebody, play with our emotions. That's what we would say in the 80s and 90s. But they gaslight us, right, with how amazing we are. I remember being in a relationship in this in one of my marriages, and the guy was like, "You are the most beautiful woman in San Diego. I have not seen a woman as beautiful as you." And I was like, "Oh, really? Okay, flattering, right?" how amazing I am, that I have a job, that I was taking care of my two kids, that I was grinding, I was doing everything that needed to be done. But many times, the reason why I was so amazing, the reason why some of you might have felt amazing in your abusive situation is because of what we were doing for that person. They wanted us to keep doing what we were doing. So the flattery and the mental control, the mental words that they knew would inspire and spark this emotional response is what kept us connected. This is not about who we are or who we have been. This is about who they want us to be in order to serve them. The moment that we stop, the mental games begin. I remember hearing, if you loved me, you would do X, Y, and Z. This is the one that I hated though. My ex. And I'm like, go back to her, right? But it took time to realize that conditioning, that if you compared me to someone that I knew hurt you and I could win your favor by tagging along to the things that you were saying, then maybe this might work. Maybe this might work. But these are classic manipulation tools to keep us stuck and to keep us feeling like we are the most important person to them and that they will actually die or suffer some grand catastrophe if we're not the one doing what they want us to do for them. The problem is, we'll never be able to please a person like that. You're always going to be wrong, even if you're right. And whatever we do is never good enough for them, no matter how hard we try. It could always be better if you would just do it the way that I told you, if you were just listening more intently to the words that I was saying, if you could just understand that I know what's best for you. Does that sound familiar to anybody? The sad truth is, and the reality is, you are important, but we don't recognize it when we're under the thumb of the oppressor, when we're under the thumb of the person who is wanting to control us and to abuse us and to keep us in that space where we're only acting and doing and being the person that they want us to be, even though that is so far from the truth of how important we really are to ourselves. People will prey on your kindness to get what they want and discard you when they're done. I'm sure you've heard that before too. Abusers use this strategy and will run you into the ground, making you believe that you are the only person who can fulfill that particular role in their lives. And to be honest, sometimes that's the truth until we get our courage and until we follow some very specific steps to remove us from that space of control into where we take back our control, find our voice, and walk in the purpose that we were intended to do. They will tell you what sounds good for your ear to hear, what sounds good for your heart to move upon and twist it to make it fit their agenda. The truth is, as we all know now, and hopefully you'll be able to share with someone who doesn't know, is that adults do whatever they need to do. We figure it out. We figure it out. We strategize. We problem solve. We say, "I need help." We can fix things on our own. We can create community. We can gain support. But this person that wants to keep you in this space where you're the only one that can do these things for them, they're not honoring your needs. So if you're constantly in this accommodating space, constantly in the space of you can't think for yourself, or you're walking around on eggshells, not knowing what decision to make, you're not serving yourself. And I know that that may sound selfish, but in a situation when you're dealing with a narcissistic person or a person with a mental disorder, in my case, I was dealing with someone who was bipolar, borderline schizophrenic, and definitely a sociopath. Didn't know that. Didn't have the language to articulate what that was until a counselor told me that, are you sure you want to be in this relationship? Are you sure you want to be in this relationship? Because he's incapable of changing. And I thought, no, but he loves me. No, but I know he has a past. I want to help him through that. I want to show him that love is enough. Forgetting that free will goes two ways, right? It's a two-way street. I have my free will to stay in the situation, or I have free will to remove myself from a situation that's no longer serving me. He has the opportunity to change, but he has to want to change. And a lot of times we want the change for the person so that it is a better, more mutually beneficial relationship. But that person may actually be incapable or unwilling and just doesn't see the problem, because as long as their needs are being met, there is no problem. If they capture your mind, they can capture your soul. So, what is it that I want you to consider doing or thinking about? What is it that would be helpful for you to recognize the signs, the symptoms, some of the words that I'm sharing with you from my own situation? And maybe many of you have heard these before as well. What I want you to consider doing, it may seem simple, it may sound simple, but in reality, it's going to take some work. Okay. What I want you to consider doing are 5 things. There are 5 practices that I want you to think about. First and foremost, I want you to recognize, learn to recognize what you're thinking and saying to yourself. That is the most important thing. What are you looking at? What are you reading? What are you hearing? And how is that making you feel on the inside? Recognizing that when you watch certain movies, you might be moved in one way or another that may not make you feel good. Recognize those things. What are you telling yourself? I'm fat. I'm ugly. I'm never good enough. Flip those words around. I am perfect. I am perfect as perfect can be. I am walking in the light. I walk in abundance. These are words I say to myself. I'm living and walking in abundance. I'm walking in wealth. I am worthy. I am perfect for who I need to be right now. Are we really perfect? No. But I'm the best version of me that I can be in this moment, in this time. Change Change what you are thinking about yourself. Talk to yourself from that place of truth that I was just saying. Affirm that you are worthy, that you are beautiful, you are unique, you are beautifully created, you are wonderfully made. Whatever you need to do to offset the negativity that may be going on in your brain based on what someone else thinks about you, you have to find and affirm within yourself who you are. And in this way, you will begin to teach others how to treat you by aligning to the truth of your own actions. That means honoring what you say you're going to do for you. That means recognizing the strength and the power within you. That means setting boundaries and respecting your boundaries. That means learning how to articulate when something doesn't feel quite right, or something that is said that doesn't align with the truth that you want to believe in yourself or for your children or for your family. You have to be okay with speaking that, communicating that, and setting the boundary that is important for you in the relationships that you are building and that you want to have. You have to do the work to set those boundaries and honor those boundaries for yourself. And when you start respecting who you want to be and how others or how you're giving people permission to treat you, all of those things should align with what you're telling yourself, the mindset that you now have around those things, the truth that you speak to yourself, and honoring where you want to go in your own life. Finally, it's practicing walking in that truth each and every day. Are you going to have some bad days? You might. Are you going to have some days where you're not feeling quite yourself and you don't want to affirm the truth to yourself? You might. Getting out of relationships and starting new relationships is never easy. But the first relationship that we're going to start is starting with the relationship with self. It is the daily practice of seeing yourself the way that you desire to see yourself, walking in that truth, aligning in that truth, and hopefully never going back to the place where someone has control over you. It begins with your mindset. It begins with understanding and recognizing that a change is necessary and that you want to be in control of the future you and living the best life that you can live after devastation. I want to thank you again for joining me on this journey. We'll be back next time and we'll be talking about emotional abuse. In the meantime, practice walking in your truth, practice being the person that you want to be, Practice saying kind things to yourself and giving yourself the same grace, respect, and honor that you give to others. Until next time.